The evening show was in full swing. The anchorwoman was stirring up interest in today's topic of discussion. She assumed that Dr. Kong had decided to talk about some alien race. Cheolsu had to explain that although the topic would involve aliens, it was definitely not about extraterrestrial beings. He was here to talk about the asteroid, Rama. An asteroid that's headed straight for them. To Earth. The anchorwoman was clearly overplaying her emotions. She asked if Rama was going to hit the Earth, and received an affirmative answer. Yes, she's right. Tired of toying with the audience's emotions, the presenter asked how a leading executive in the development of a nuclear engine could have anything to do with asteroids. Again, how can you make such claims without evidence? Cheolsu parried the presenter's attacks by saying that he was also an expert in the field of astronomy and could predict phenomena from primary data. He gave the example of a similar Rama asteroid. Trying to explain everything in scientific language, talking about solar sails and other complicated things, Cheolsu caused only bewilderment and yawns from the listeners. Suddenly, the screen behind Cheolsu's back turned on. A middle-aged man with an unpleasant look interrupted Dr. Kang's explanation. Just as Cheolsu had said, Rama was now drifting in space like a solar sail. It is because of this effect that the closer the asteroid is to the Sun, the slower it is. This contradicts the fact that Rama will accelerate and change its course toward Earth. Cheolsu explained that Rama's surface is unusual, and the combination of the asteroid's rotation and gravitational anomalies will gradually accelerate it. The expert remarked that mankind did not have the kind of optical instruments that would allow them to see the surface of something so distant, so Cheolsu's words were no more than dust in his eyes. Yes, the expert was right, but Cheolsu knows about the surface of Rama because of knowledge from the future. Satisfied with his observation, he recognized that perhaps Cheolsu was right, but without proof his words are worthless. Cheolsu once again failed to provide proof, which raised a laugh. The show was over. The staff is slowly going home. The director thanked Dr. Kong for his participation. The people working on the set began to doubt Cheolsu's competence, because he couldn't substantiate his words in any way. With such a rich imagination, he should write novels, not be a scientist, thought those around him. Cheolsu walked down to the parking lot and got into his car. Yes, he had screwed up once again. What's the point of having knowledge about the future if no one believes you? A sudden phone call interrupted Cheolsu's self-abuse. It was his former boss, Smilo. Cheolsu decided he'd had enough stress for the day and tossed the phone aside, ignoring the call. Suddenly, he noticed that he was covered by the shadow of human silhouettes. Cheolsu was surrounded by men in black suits. They informed him that they weren't going to do anything with him, but there was someone who wanted to have a word with him. Smilov was on the other end of the line. He was extremely unhappy with the public activities of his former employee. Smilov threatened that the ICDS would not ignore Cheolsu's actions. Dr. Kong interrupted Smilov to tell him to watch Rama's course before it was too late to take action. Smilov realized there was no point in talking further. Cheolsu is on his own wavelength. Cheolsu continued his line about the asteroid and the threat it posed. Smilov did not listen to the ravings of a crazy man. In his opinion, all of Cheolsu's words were fiction. In fury, he threw the phone away, and he himself turned red as a tomato. Looking at the broadcast, where Cheolsu spoke, he could not understand why he even thought that the asteroid would change direction. Suddenly, a man peeked into Smilov's office. It was his subordinate, who held the same opinion as Cheolsu. He almost threw him out of the office in a fit of anger, but in time he noticed the figure behind the subordinate. It was Director Klasky and directly the director of the ICDS. Klasky had come with the news that they had finally succeeded in calculating Rama's trajectory. The ICDS confirmed. Rama was heading toward Earth. The familiar door opened in front of the man. Cheolsu walked back to his department. After introducing himself to everyone, he announced that from now on their department was called the Asteroid Defense Squad and he was their new leader. Cheolsu looks forward to getting back to work. The ICDS is about to launch the completed Project Atlas R into space. A reporter is reporting live from the scene in St. Trusville. Project Atlas R will be launched at 10 o'clock this evening, local time. According to the plan, the rockets will redirect the asteroid with their thrust. According to the reporter, 10 rockets are already ready for launch, and the ICDS is preparing 20 more as soon as they are ready. The subsequent launch is scheduled for 3 weeks from now, with the final launch planned for 6 weeks from now. The whole world is watching live. It's going to be an incredible spectacle. However, it's still unclear why the rockets are divided into 3 parts. The journalist asked the engineers that question. Such a decision makes sense, because the asteroid has an elongated soccer shape. Each rocket will land using a special mechanism at different points on the asteroid. Once landed, they will all ignite to alter Rama's trajectory. In theory, the plan does sound simple and effective. We are transported to the ICDS's control center. The staff has checked all systems and is preparing to begin the countdown for Atlas. The countdown begins, and everyone watches carefully. The countdown is over. Atlas has successfully lifted off. Soon it will pierce the sky and fly beyond the Earth's atmosphere. The control center is watching the takeoff carefully. The engines have begun to disengage. Another success awaited the scientists and engineers. They are preparing to separate the second stage engines. Cheolsu stood silently watching the attempt to save the world. The flight was a success. All systems worked as they should. The assistant cheerfully informs her superior that they had succeeded. All 10 missiles were successfully launched. Cheolsu didn't pay attention to the girl. He was busy talking on the phone. The rockets from number 13 had problems with the bolts. He demanded that they be replaced. He was told, with a sneer in the voice, that he shouldn't worry about such minor issues. Cheolsu lost his temper, for the problem was huge. Essentially, they are saying to launch a nuclear missile with a malfunction. If even one of the missiles exploded in the Earth's atmosphere, the nuclear emissions would cause tremendous damage to the Earth. Without even bothering to finish listening to the answer, Cheolsu ordered the stupid employee to vacate his position immediately. Dr. Kong was amazed at how many incompetent people surrounded him. Would that Taiku were here, he thought. After all, Cheolsu had decided to go it alone. He couldn't trust anyone. Finally noticing Dr. Odeli, Chief Cheolsu decided to find out why she had come. Odeli spoke again about the successful rocket launch, but without a smile. There was a look of concern in her gaze. Cheolsu, receiving the news indifferently, asked her to leave if there was no other information to share. Throwing a sad look, Odeli turned around and left while Cheolsu drowned in his tasks. 3 weeks later, the Project Atlas R team reconvened at Central Control. The rockets had reached Rama and were attempting to land on its surface. The top leadership of the ICDS gathered to witness this crucial moment in person. The vehicle successfully landed on Rama's surface. Cheolsu was frozen by the sight. He concentrated on watching the drilling process. Odeli began to worry about her boss's unhealthy appearance and asked him to go home early today to rest. Cheolsu refused. The assistant's attempts to keep her supervisor healthy were ignored. If they lost even one missile, the whole plan would be ruined. So Cheolsu is going to lead the process to the very end. The first rocket was attached to the surface of Rama. It was a success on the way to save humanity, so the staff could not contain their emotions. The halfway point had been passed. A smile flashed across Cheolsu's face for the first time in a long time. Suddenly, the command center flooded red. The Atlas altitude control system had malfunctioned. The cause was an anomalous gravity slip on the asteroid's surface. It was going beyond the expected values many times over. Cheolsu ordered them to find another place to land. The search is underway. He also ordered to measure the gravity in the area. The staff is doing everything they can. Even if a location could be found, it was not certain that the rocket could be detached and set up elsewhere. The landing site was slippery and tricky. There was a chance that the rocket would simply fall off. The team of scientists, in sweat, was thinking of a solution to the problem. Suddenly, there was a rumbling sound. The hall was blinded by a bright flash from the screen. With worry on his face, Cheolsu asked what was the matter. A signal had been lost with 3 rockets on the surface of the asteroid. The ground beneath them had collapsed. Cheolsu instantly darkened at such news. Odeli turned to the leader in a panic, waiting for new orders. Unable to bear the weight of the news, Cheolsu collapsed to the ground. Unconsciously, the scientist's body lay on the cold tiles of the control center. Cheolsu woke up in the hospital room. The first thing he saw was Odeli's concerned face. While she was trying to find out how the exhausted scientist was feeling, Cheolsu didn't realize why she was here. If she's here, then what's up with Project Atlas? Before Cheolsu could voice his thoughts aloud, Odeli abruptly stepped back to call for the doctor. A whole crowd from the ICDS had gathered behind the dense curtain. Instead of words of condolence or wishes for his health, the higher-ups began blaming him for the failure, deciding that the blame lay entirely on Cheolsu. The director of the ICDS calmed down the screaming people, for there was no point in looking for someone to blame. This matter could wait for now. Cheolsu didn't know yet that the Atlas project had failed. He looked at the crowd in bewilderment. The old man confirmed Cheolsu's fears. Project Atlas had failed. The news was another blow to the young scientist's already fragile health. The director regretted that it had turned out this way. Even though he had no hopes for the project, it was still a possible solution to the problem. Klasky said that they would not announce the failure of the project. A public outcry could derail the evacuation plan. What evacuation plan? Cheolsu couldn't believe his ears. As it turned out, the ISDC top brass was working on 2 scenarios. In the first scenario, Cheolsu and his team would steer the asteroid off course. The second option involved evacuating all the important people into space. When Cheolsu was told that they could no longer fund the engine tests, he didn't understand why at first, but now the picture was clear. It was because the money had gone into the evacuation plan. Since the Atlas plan had failed, Klasky offered Cheolsu the opportunity to lead the NOAA evacuation project. He needed a brilliant engineer who could bring the project to fruition. The higher-ups drilled Cheolsu with their eyes, hoping he would agree. Under such pressure, he saw Odeli's worried face throwing a hard look to nowhere. Cheolsu agreed to participate in Project NOAA. The development was well underway. The final touches were left to realize the plan. Project NOAA was in its final stages and was beginning to gather passengers aboard. Cheolsu watched silently as the young men filled the escape shuttle. Among them was, and Dr. Odeli. Seeing Cheolsu in his work suit, she realized he wasn't going anywhere and wondered why. Cheolsu explained that he didn't pass for health reasons and probably wouldn't survive the flight. Odeli didn't understand how they would cope from here on out without their talented leader. Project Atlas and NOAA were only made possible because of Cheolsu. If he was gone, who could replace him? Cheolsu reassured Odeli by saying that she was no less talented than himself. That's not what a girl in love would want to hear. She became very upset, and Cheolsu couldn't cheer her up. He didn't feel any emotion. Suddenly, Odeli blurted out that Cheolsu was a real liar. She knew why he wasn't flying with them. Cheolsu didn't trust the others. Cheolsu tried to justify himself, but he realized it was pointless. He always tried to do things alone, not counting on others to help him. After saying what he thought, Odeli threw away her helmet and refused to fly. Cheolsu tried to talk his irascible assistant out of it, because if she was gone, no one would be able to control the engines in the spaceship. Odeli was adamant. She didn't care how the people of the ship would cope without her. Suddenly Cheolsu grabbed her arm. Odeli was clearly not ready for this turn of events. She couldn't stand it and cried like a little girl. It seemed to her that Cheolsu blames herself for the failure of the Atlas project, and that's why she refuses to fly with them. The Dr. Kong she knows would never let such a failure stop him. It was incomprehensible to her, so why would he give up now? Cheolsu understood Odeli's thoughts, but he didn't give up. There were other reasons. Odeli wondered why Cheolsu was choosing to stay on Earth, which would soon be gone. Not getting an answer to her question, she cried again. The speakers demanded that Odeli board the ship immediately. Cheolsu tried to convince her that this wasn't their last meeting, but Odeli realized that such a thing was only possible in another world or after death. Without explaining anything, Cheolsu asked her to just believe. Cheolsu gripped her hands tightly, giving Odeli strength, and she saw confidence in Cheolsu's gaze. Odeli was only willing to let go of her lover's hands if he promised her that he would meet her again. Others might have lied at that moment, but Cheolsu really had that opportunity. Therefore, he promised her that they would definitely meet again. The escape shuttle flew straight up to the stars. Cheolsu accompanied its flight with his indifferent gaze. When he thought of Odeli, his heart clenched, but he realized that she was just a memory that he would have to forget. This time, Cheolsu decided to meet the end of the world on a park bench. He leisurely opened a can of beer and brought it to his dry lips. This was his third failure in the unequal battle with the asteroid. Closing his eyes, he braced himself for impact. The light blinded everything around him. All that follows is the end of light and darkness. Cheolsu once again opened his tired eyes. He was still in the same small room. Cheolsu lay in bed and looked up at the ceiling. It was the end of May on the calendar. Cheolsu's mother asked him to get up quickly because he was late for school. After gathering his thoughts, Cheolsu decided to move on. The familiar school again. The same class again. Cheolsu stared pensively out the window, immersed in his thoughts. As Cheolsu studied hard, he could hear the sounds of kids playing soccer outside for gym class. Cheolsu had detected the asteroid beforehand, but that didn't prevent disaster. Even a breakthrough in engine technology didn't fix the situation. Looking out the window, he searched for a solution to the problem. Of course, he could warn everyone right now, but no one would believe a child. Suddenly, the silhouette of Dr. Odeli appeared in front of Cheolsu. Although he had been close to her in his past life, he remembered almost nothing about her in this one. Scraps of vivid memories rushed into Cheolsu's head. The suddenly approaching Taiku decided to find out why Cheolsu wasn't working out today. This helped Cheolsu come to his senses. Not hearing the question, Cheolsu asked Taiku to repeat himself. Taiku asked why Cheolsu wasn't doing development, considering he had been doing it for months. Taiku even thought that little Kong had given up. Cheolsu said that he really decided not to do it anymore. It had become kind of pointless. Based on the last attempt, Cheolsu realized that there was no point in developing a better engine. Such an answer didn't satisfy Taiku. Cheolsu tried to explain that he had lost interest in becoming an astronomer or an engineer. After the answer, there was only silence. Cheolsu decided to take a look at Taiku. Taiku was furious. His whole face was creased with disgust. According to Taiku, Cheolsu had stolen developments from him and then decided to drop everything because he couldn't think of anything further. Cheolsu rightly pointed out that Taiku had decided to become a professional gamer on his own and he hadn't stolen anything. Taiku realized how delusional his claim was that he even got embarrassed. Taking a seat next to his former friend, Taiku started talking about development. According to him, development is the best of the best. And his name is Taiku, from the word technician. Cheolsu tried to understand where he was going with this. Taiku explained that he was a technician, so he had to be the best. Kong didn't understand what that had to do with it. What did he have to do with all this? Taiku hoped that Cheolsu would understand right away, but he would still have to work on his explanation. It turned out that Taiku had noticed how hard Cheolsu was studying everything. A doubt settled in him that he wouldn't be able to keep up with Cheolsu. It was important to Taiku that he was the best in his chosen field, otherwise it wouldn't make sense to him. To summarize, it was clear that Taiku's dream of being a thermal engineer had changed because he didn't agree to be number 2. And now that Cheolsu doesn't want to do research anymore, Taiku is going to go back to engine development. Realizing what kind of idiot he used to work with, Cheolsu became a little downcast. A loud girl's scream caught the guy's attention. The red-haired girl was shouting that she would definitely return everything. She needs a little more time, and is it even possible to demand a refund to her friends? The dark-haired girl reminded that she had already given a reprieve. She demands that the debtor return all the money here and now. Cheolsu watched Yumi Gong's decisive actions with interest. On the first day of the new semester, right after Cheolsu and Taiku's outstanding performance, the next on the list was Yumi Gong. She walked up to the blackboard with a confident stride and turned around to face the class. Looking at her new classmates, she introduced herself and said that her dream was to become the richest person on the planet. Despite her young age, she knows about investing, selling real estate and bonds. She is also willing to lend to her classmates at a modest interest rate of about 1.5% per month. The teacher even got sick after another egregious performance. Yumi also made it clear that if the debt is not repaid, she will do whatever it takes to retrieve her money. Not to make matters worse, the teacher asked Yumi to tell her about anything else. Not understanding what the teacher wanted to convey, Yumi decided to provide an example of a loan statement. Realizing that this was no ordinary girl, the teacher asked her to return to her seat. This moment was vividly imprinted in Cheolsu's memory. He recalled everything he knew about her. And those memories were not pleasant ones. Rumors of her dragging around her debtors, forcing them to work. Or how she sued people who defaulted on their loans. She even made parents pay the costs for moral damages, and if someone still refused to pay her back, she would do everything she could to ensure they had a bad credit history for the rest of their lives. A crowd had gathered around the girls. This was not their first confrontation. The guys' opinions were divided. Some were in favor of Yumi, and some were in favor of Semi. Realizing that the odds were clearly not on her side, Semi hurried out of the classroom. Yumi cast a glance at the class, which made everyone decide to scatter to their seats. Even though she was right about the situation, the society still judged her. It was a heavy burden for the little schoolgirl. Cheolsu on the other hand was sure that all the rumors about her were overblown. Can't a girl at that age pull this sort of thing off? Towards the end of the school day, Cheolsu walked to the teacher's office to submit his homework. Taiku was supposed to help him, but the jerk had run off duty as usual. Cheolsu didn't understand why he was paired with Taiku. Their numbers on the list weren't even close. As he walked down the stairs, he heard the girl scream again. Yumi was once again trying to beat her debt out of a persistent defaulter. Semi was borrowing more and more money from Yumi, saying she would pay it back next month. Cheolsu couldn't unceremoniously get involved in this squabble, but the girls were standing right outside the teacher's office. He decided it would be best if he waited a bit until the girls had left. The girls continued to argue, growing louder and louder. These constant quarrels were getting tiresome for everyone around them. Realizing that people weren't choosing sides, Semi decided to do something mean. Semi cried and started yelling that Yumi had never considered her a friend. The girls around immediately took Semi's side, and asked Yumi to give her some more time. They didn't realize that Semi was using them to pressure poor Yumi. Yumi was fed up with the situation. In her opinion, friends should keep their words, especially those that involved money. She immediately realized that Semi was squeezing tears out of her and asked her to stop acting out. It was a final warning. Hearing this, Semi asked caustically, and then what would happen? Would she call her mom? To which she received a very mature answer. Yumi would go to court. The words about going to court scared Semi. Yumi continued to scare her classmate by showing her the loan agreement. Semi couldn't believe that she would be treated so cruelly. At first, all she wanted to do was call her parents, but she realized that Semi was acting this way because of them. The insult to her parents tore all the masks off Semi. In a rage, she lashed out at Yumi, trying to hit her with her hand. Cheolsu was still standing there watching the drama unfold. Semi was almost ready to strike. Yumi was only provoking her, showing that she wasn't afraid but hinted that this blow would spell big trouble for Semi. The little girl was terrified at the mere word punishment. Semi managed to suppress her rage and agreed to return the money just to get rid of her. To settle the score with Yumi here and now, she asked her girlfriends for money. The full amount was carelessly thrown in Yumi's direction. From that moment on, the friendship between the girls was over. Semi and her followers quickly walked in the opposite direction, leaving Yumi alone with her money. Coming to her senses, Yumi began to carefully pick up the banknotes when suddenly a strong wind swept them aside. The money fell to the corner where Cheolsu had been standing all this time, holding his breath. The young ones met each other's gaze. Cheolsu's gaze was as indifferent as ever, but Yumi showed surprise on her face. The girl tried to ignore her classmate, but Cheolsu himself started the conversation, trying to explain that Yumi's methods were too harsh and that she was only making life harder for herself. Yumi couldn't understand why Cheolsu, who was indifferent to everything, suddenly started to worry about her. Cheolsu was sad to look at her, but Yumi was just doing things her own way. In her opinion, Cheolsu was the one who looked sad. A child who only sits in books and doesn't talk to others. Among all the people, only Taiku communicates with Cheolsu. After counting the money collected, Yumi said that if she was going to seek advice, it would only be from someone with better social skills than Cheolsu. With a sharp expression, the girl left to go about her business. Cheolsu saw her off with a glance. Memories from the past flooded back to the boy. In those memories, the man also didn't accept other people's help. Cheolsu couldn't figure out who it was, but he knew that such an attitude wouldn't do any good. The next day, Semi continued to play the victim. She started spreading rumors that Yumi had called her parents and threatened them to pay back the debt. To avoid being baseless, she involved her friends as witnesses. Semi continued her performance, destroying Yumi's already terrible reputation. Yumi sat and silently listened to the show. To prevent the further spread of false information, Yumi got up from the table and almost went to confront her, but it was clear that nothing good would come of it. In order not to escalate the conflict, she walked out of the classroom. Semi's goal was accomplished. Cheolsu fell asleep to the hum of the girls. He could see unfamiliar silhouettes from his past life, but he couldn't remember who they were. After coming to his senses, Cheolsu went to Yumi with a solution to her problem. The girl couldn't trust Cheolsu. She didn't understand why he was doing all this. The main reason was that in his previous life, he had also suffered from rumors, but he couldn't say such a thing. Cheolsu made up a reason that the rumors about Yumi made it impossible to study in class and offered a helping hand. For Yumi, such a response became hilarious. Loud laughter resoundingly bounced off the school walls. Yumi was ready to listen to Cheolsu's suggestion. Cheolsu shared his plan to save Yumi's reputation. The next day, classes started as usual. Cheolsu and Yumi were passing signs to each other and plotting something. After class, Cheolsu approached Yumi to ask for money. Everyone looked on in disbelief, because Yumi was disliked in class. After saying that she had the opportunity, Yumi was willing to give money to Cheolsu. Cheolsu asked for $2 to go to an internet cafe after school, as he had forgotten his wallet at home. Apparently Yumi wasn't fully privy to the plan. This was the first time she had encountered someone borrowing such a small amount of money. Not though, she had to lend $2, since the minimum for borrowing is $1. Yumi held out a contract with familiar terms and showed her where to sign. Cheolsu and Yumi eyed each other suspiciously. As it turned out, part of the plan was for Cheolsu to borrow some money from Yumi in front of everyone. This was necessary for his further realization. Cheolsu signed the document. Taking the contract, Yumi handed him the amount he needed. After finishing the transaction, Yumi said loudly that she would leave the classroom to get some air. Cheolsu was immediately jumped on by Semi and her girlfriends, trying to dissuade him from borrowing money from Yumi. They started intimidating him with rumors about what a horrible person Yumi was. Yumi was hiding behind the door the whole time. According to Semi, the little banker is consorting with gangsters who help her get out of debt. She even takes away clothes and belongings as payment for debts. After intimidating Cheolsu, the girls began to playfully worry about him. They didn't know it was all part of the plan. Cheolsu asked what would happen if he paid back the money on time. Would everything be okay? Semi said yes, there won't be any problems, but that doesn't make Yumi a good person. Cheolsu continued to break down the rumors. Asking if anyone had seen Yumi interacting with the bandits, Semi could only rely on rumors. To save her friend, Semi's henchwoman said that there was a witness to the contact between Yumi and the bandits. Cheolsu wondered if he could contact this witness. The girls were not prepared for that question. Tired of keeping up this dialogue, the girls asked Cheolsu why he was protecting Yumi. Cheolsu replied that he is not protecting Yumi. It's just that the rumors he's heard don't match the rumors Semi and her friends have heard. The second part of the plan involved Cheolsu spreading rumors about Yumi. Yumi didn't see how the extra rumors would help her, but it was good gossip. Returning to his dialogue with the girls, Cheolsu began to whitewash Yumi's reputation. According to him, Yumi never cheats when it comes to money and always keeps her promises. Summarizing the above, Yumi does seem to be an honest, decent girl. Semi couldn't accept that her efforts to tarnish Yumi's reputation were failing. She asked where Cheolsu had heard such rumors. Cheolsu replied that he couldn't remember. Semi only chuckled and questioned how they could believe him without proof. Semi's critical thinking was undeveloped. A hole appeared in her assertion. Yumi immediately grabbed the opportunity and asked the same question that Semi had asked. A look of resentment could be seen on Yumi's face. There was no such thing in Cheolsu's plan. He was even a little surprised by Yumi's appearance. Semi was dumbfounded as well. Yumi continued to press Semi with uncomfortable questions. Why can she be believed and Cheolsu can't? Since Semi's rumors are true, why can't Cheolsu's rumors be true? The guys in the class also agreed with Yumi's argument. It became clear to everyone in the class that all the rumors were started by Semi. Semi tried to save what was left of her reputation by saying that Yumi had insulted her parents, but even her friends turned away from her. No one wanted to take Semi's side. Semi still managed to get her minions to confirm the truth of her words. It was a desperate move for Semi. Public opinion began to tilt in her favor. Yumi was once again in a difficult situation. Yumi had to admit to insulting Semi's parents. She said it with confidence and didn't deny anything. But that didn't lessen Semi's guilt in any way. She was the one who started the false rumors about Yumi. Yumi wasn't going to give Semi any chance. She decided to break Semi's support and turn to her friends. It turns out that Yumi isn't the first victim of rumors in their class. John Minhee was the victim of rumors that she cheated on a test. There was gossip about Minhee that she bought the sneakers with money from the class coffers. She had a hard time too. The source of all these rumors was none other than Semi. The girls' faces changed. Everyone in the class looked at Semi with judgmental looks. Semi pressed that there was no confirmation to these words, but her friends knew something. Minhee confirmed that Semi had spread rumors about John Minhee cheating on her. And it was Semi who heard the rumor about John Minhee's sneakers. The universe collapsed for Semi. She threw a tantrum. Semi admitted that she really did spread all those rumors, but Yumi insulted her parents. That makes Yumi look worse than she is. Yumi interrupted Semi's tantrum. She apologized for being impatient and overreacting. Even though Yumi was at fault, but if Semi had paid her debt on time, this wouldn't have happened. This time, Yumi pretended to be a victim and a martyr. To increase the effect, Yumi acted out crying. Apparently, a woman's tears have much more power than evidence. All the classmates came to Yumi's defense. Unable to withstand the pressure, Semi ran out of the classroom. Yumi, on the other hand, continued to play the victim. Cheolsu was shocked by her behavior, to say the least, but soon things started to fall into place. Yumi stuck her tongue out childishly, showing that this round was won by her. At recess, the kids decided to go outside for some air. Yumi brought a can of soda as a present, for Cheolsu's excellent plan. Cheolsu was satisfied with his work. In this life, although he didn't save the earth, he helped a friend in need. After thanking Yumi for the drink, they drank the can in one gulp. Cheolsu still decided to wonder why Yumi had deviated from the plan. It seemed to Yumi that if Cheolsu stood up for her, it would look like an excuse. There was also the problem of Cheolsu's authority. He didn't have much influence over his classmates. Despite being a diligent student, Cheolsu remains an outsider. He has an emotionless face, only has Taiku as a friend, and his social skills are at the bottom. All in all, he's an outsider. That was the reason Yumi had to intervene herself. Yumi had her own plan to solve the problem. After all, she was close to Semi and knew how she would act. And when Cheolsu showed up on the roof with his plan, Yumi thought it was a bit silly. So Yumi replayed everything in her own way. All Cheolsu had to do was accept defeat. The social skills of the 13-year-old girl were way cooler than those of the man who is living for the 4th time. Yumi, on the other hand, couldn't stop. Like a detective, she proceeded to explain the picture of what had happened. According to her, if a boy were to stand up for a girl, Yumi stammered at this point. Cheolsu even now couldn't understand what she was getting at. It's not clear how Cheolsu was even able to marry in his first life with such an ability to read the situation. Yumi, due to her age, became embarrassed and refused to continue the sentence. Instead of words, she shoved Cheolsu in the side with her elbow. This blow was sudden to the boy. He didn't realize what he had been hit for. Yumi embarrassedly replied that he deserved it. As she left, the girl reminded Cheolsu of his $2 debt. Cheolsu was annoyed that he would have to pay back the debt. The kid's school life went on.